What's going on, everyone? I hope you are doing well. Today we're going to be breaking down my best settings that you need to be using in Marvel Rivals, from sensitivity settings, how to increase your FPS, specific hero settings, and a lot more. I've been splitting my time equally between mouse and key and controller, so no matter the input or the platform, PC or console, I do have you covered. Lots to talk about, so let's get right to it. We are going to kick things off on the display tab. A lot here will depend on your system, your specs, and what you want to maintain in terms of your experience. Do you want more FPS? Do you want it to look better? So do keep that in mind. For me, I'm gonna have it as borderless window. If you do want a slight bump in FPS, you do want to use full screen. I have NVIDIA DLSS. This will again kind of depend on your overall setup if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. For super resolution mode, I have as performance. If you want it to look better, you can do ultra quality, you can do ultra performance. I find performance just gives me that little FPS boost and the game still looks pretty good. Super resolution sharpening, this will kind of depend on your preference. If you are struggling on the FPS, you can lower this. I like my game to be a little bit sharper, a little bit more crisp. I think it looks better. It's just something that I like. Frame generation mode, this is going to kind of put frames in between frames. I don't think you want this. This kind of, for me, made the game feel a little janky, so I do have this as off. Low latency mode, I have NVIDIA Reflex low latency. Brightness will depend on your monitor. For me, I just have it as a flat 50. Limit FPS I have as off. I want as many FPS as I can get. Show FPS and network stats I have as on. I want to be seeing what my data is getting. I want to know my FPS and I want to know if I am lagging. VSync I have as off. If we come down here to the graphics and quality settings, there is a lot you can do to optimize. I do suggest you hit this optimize setting, and this will kind of adjust the game to your PC specs. It's a good way to start. If you do want more FPS though, because honestly, Marvel Rivals doesn't run that great right now. I think it needs a few optimization patches. I have an RTX 4090 and a 7950. I'm not even getting 240 FPS if I am on Ultra. In general though, you do want to lower the global illumination and reflection quality. These two are big ones to increase your FPS. I do SSGI. I am doing screen space reflections. If you want to even get more FPS though, textures are pretty good to lower, and shadow details is also pretty good to lower. You'll notice I am on medium. Shadows I just don't really care about as much. Honestly, sometimes even having shadows on low is even better to see more people. You can kind of see things a little bit more clearly. But in general, again, I have a 4090 and all my settings are generally kind of like on high. So adjust to your PC specs. Audio, I find, is something that a lot of people kind of breeze over, and audio, in my opinion, is very important. Master volume, you're gonna want this at 100. I think the game defaults at like 70. For me, I bump it all the way up. Sound effects I want at max. I want to know exactly what's happening. I want to hear stuff around me. Lobby ambience I have at 50. Music volume I have way down at 35, and same thing with the lobby music. I don't want music blasting to the point where I can't hear things that are happening in game. And a big one, that in-game voice volume, I do lower this all the way down to 50 as well. For playback mode, I'm just doing headphones and I have 3D enhancement off. Background playback I have on so I can't hear if I am tapping out. Voice chat will kind of depend, but I do push to talk just so I'm not kind of open micing people. I think you should have this. You shouldn't be open micing to the whole lobby. I don't think that's good. Voice chat volume I have as 60. I found that the default was a little bit too loud, so I lowered it a little bit. Mic volume I do default, and voice chat I actually have as off right now because I was recording some videos. Subtitles you could turn on if you're having a hard time hearing what the voice announcers are saying. There's already so much going on in Marvel Rivals though, I think you should leave it off. For the combat mix, I find a lot of people are kind of breezing over this tab. I'm not quite sure why. A lot of this is default, but there is one thing that you really want to look at, and for me, it's the announcer volume. The announcer volume, in my eyes, is just a little bit too loud, so I bumped them down too. It cuts the volume by like 33%. And critical health volume, I also lowered by a little bit. I found that when that pulse goes off, it's just a little bit too loud. So if we get to the keyboard settings, there's a lot here. A lot of the actual binds I have as default though, so don't overstress this. I'm running 800 DPI with 1.7. This means if I go across my whole mouse pad, I can basically do a 360 and end up back in the same spot. But again, it really depends on the player. There's people that use really high sensitivities and do completely fine. So don't overthink this. Start with something lower, I would say, and then tune from there. All of this stuff I have as off. Reticle I find is something that is really important in this game. The default one is absolutely awful. There's no kind of specific aiming with it. So if you do go to advanced for this, I like a green crosshair. I find this to be the most clean, the most accurate for me. If you want to copy this, it's 80 on the opacity, 60 on the width, 100 on the opacity outline, and the blur is 0. And then for crosshair length, I am doing 20. Crosshair angle is 0. And for the color, if you want this lime green, I do 12, 255, 12. I find the lime green works very well on pretty much all the maps. There's nothing really like this shade of green, so it works pretty good. You could try pink. There is nothing really pink on a lot of the maps right now. Allied health bars I'm leaving as default, and then again, like I mentioned earlier, pretty much all my binds right now are default. For UI, I have everything as default. It's all right here though if you do need to copy it. Communication, again, everything is default. And spectating, again, everything is default. If you are a controller warrior, like I said, I'm trying to split my time equally between keyboard and mouse and controller so I can learn both inputs and also provide a little bit of a unique kind of experience when I do record these videos for you guys. Cursor sensitivity, I found the default 100 just way too low, so I bumped all this all the way up to 200. Vibration I have as off, always on my controllers. I do not want my hand shaking when I am firing. I've had my vibration off since I played Halo 2 back in like 2004 when I started playing that game. So for combat and controller sensitivities, horizontal sensitivity, I did bump up from the default to 145. And vertical sensitivity, I bumped up a little bit to 85. If you think of it like this way, you have to go 180 degrees to turn around. You only got to go 90 degrees to look straight up. So you definitely want horizontal sensitivity to be a little bit higher. Again, though, this all depends on what you want and what you want with your gameplay. I'm used to kind of a more middle of the range sensitivity, so this is something to consider. There is stuff in the advanced tab that are absolutely critical though. So first off, I like the linear curve. It's just a 1-to-1 ratio. I have played this on Apex for quite some time now, so I do linear curve. Minimum input dead zone. This you're gonna wanna have to be as low as you possibly can without having stick drift. For me, it's 3. The closer you get to 0 or 1, the better off you will be. This basically just means how much do you have to press your stick before your character starts moving. The lower it is, the quicker your character will respond and the more finessing you will have. Maximum input dead zone is the opposite. How far do you wanna push your stick till you get to that max curve? For me, I want this to be all the way down. I can have the most kind of finesse with my controller if it is all the way down. If I'm raising it, I don't have quite as much gap to actually control my actions, so you do want this all the way down in my opinion. Max dead zone sensitivity boost. This is an interesting one. This is basically ramp up. So when I do get all the way to that max input, when I am rotating around, when is it gonna start kind of turning faster and faster? This I generally don't like, but since Marvel Rivals has so much going on, I want my max dead zone sensitivity boost to be up a little bit higher. So when I do hit that max sensitivity, if I need to turn even faster because someone is kind of dancing around me, I want to be able to do that. So I have this at 40, and horizontal max dead zone response time, I have this as 30. I adjusted this a little bit lower and higher. For me, the game started to feel really janky, so I left this as default. Swap left and right sticks, absolutely not, although this might make for a fun video and fun challenge. Maybe I'll try that sometime. Invert horizontal look and vertical look, I have this as off as well. Aim assist window size, I do have this a little bit lower. This is when things start to get really interesting. So aim assist window size is basically when is the aim assist when you get on that enemy, when is it gonna start to kick in? For me, the default, which is around 50, I wanna say, felt a little odd. Like I couldn't get on the target. So when I lowered this, I could get my cursor a little bit more onto my actual target that I want to shoot at, and then it would start to snap with that aim assist. If you aren't aware, there's a little bit more aim assist on console, so this could affect what you want to do. But for me, because there's so many people sometimes in one area, I felt like that if the aim assist window was higher, I could not get to the target I wanted sometimes. It's almost like the aim assist was preventing me from getting onto the target. So lowering this is absolutely something that I do recommend. Aim assist strength, you're going to want to leave this as full 100. And then projectile heroes and hit scan heroes, aim assist ease in. This is a little bit odd. This is basically how easy are you going to aim into that aim assist when you aren't aiming at enemies. For projectiles, I wanted to lower this, and hit scan heroes, I wanted to higher this. So I want more ease in with the hit scan stuff, and I want it to be a little bit quicker with the projectile heroes. Specifically with the hit scan ones, I felt like it's a little bit too janky when I am playing on controller. Like I'm missing wide left and missing wide right, and I couldn't just get on the target. So I did adjust the aim assist ease in for the hit scans. Projectile heroes, it's almost like the opposite for some reason, not quite sure why. I kind of wish they were just the same, it was just one setting, but it is nice to have some options in your customization. So for projectiles, I do lower it. Hit scan heroes, I do raise it up. Melee heroes, this for me, I don't think it's necessary. You can leave this as 0. And then disable aim assist at max dead zone, you want this as off as well. Again, for the controller tab, the reticle is the same. We already went over this on the keyboard tab, so look there if you do want it. UI is default and communication is default. Before we get to some specific hero settings, I will just mention that the social tab here is pretty much all default, and accessibility, this will depend on what your needs overall with the game and that type of thing. I don't have a ton of specific hero settings to mention. However, I will mention that Spider-Man and Venom specifically, there is a setting that you do want to change, and this is going to be the automatic swing. So if you have this as on, which it is by default, when you press the swing button, it's just going to lash basically onto whatever it finds closest, I want to say, or just within ease. This gives you pretty much no control over how you are swinging, so you do want to turn this off so you can aim and then swing. If you have this as on, I think it's a big throw. Otherwise, when it comes to specific settings, if you are playing a character like Black Panther compared to someone like, we'll say, Moon Knight, maybe Punisher, maybe Hela, if you're playing someone like Black Panther, you may want to increase your sensitivity. And the reason behind this is any character where you are kind of diving in and getting into engagements, you're going to need to be looking left and right, up and down around those enemies much more than if I'm playing someone like Punisher, where I'm sitting a little bit more back in that like midline, shooting players who are all in front of me. So if you are playing a dive character like Black Panther, maybe you are playing Iron Fist or someone like that, you're going to want to change your sensitivity to be a little bit higher. This is something that you should consider. If you're playing a lot of different characters, I would recommend you just leave one sensitivity. You don't want to be flip-flopping with your sensitivity. This is one of the worst things you can do. You want to kind of set your sensitivity, get used to it, and then make fine adjustments over time. You do not want to rapidly change your sensitivity all the time. And that's going to be pretty much it for my sensitivity breakdown. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below. I would love to help you out. And as always, happy gaming, legends.